We're back on our program, Jones and Company, and once again we're joined by Mr. Rich Black, the CEO, publisher, and editor-in-chief of ONIX magazine, along with Ms. D. Chanel Reed, joining us on our program. Ms. Reed, welcome to Jones and Company.
Well, thank you for inviting us.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Earlier we had Bishop Ellis, who joined us as the 2025 ONIX magazine Person of the Year. We talked about, of course, the impact that Bishop Ellis has had nationally, the traction over the years that he has made in the United States and Asia and all over the world. In talking about ONIX magazine and what it has come to represent and the impact that it has had, and in reading some of course, Mr. Black's history and his connection to Bethune-Cookman, the historically black university, formerly Daytona Educational and Industrial Training School for Negro Girls in 1904, it reinforces for us the importance of education to the African diaspora in the United States of America. And even looking at the history of Florida, between, I read that, in the 1930s and 40s, per capita, that there was no other state that had, as much lynchings as Florida. When we look at today, really what has happened and how history has affected the issues that we see in Florida today, how do you think that, issues like that and how we have tried to bring education, bring financial literacy, bring civics even closer to African American communities, how have those issues shaped the history of Florida?
Okay.
Well, thank you for that question, and thank you again for inviting us to be a part of this show. Yes, it has been a very interesting past couple of years in the way that our community has been shaped. I think that it's where you get your education is not the important thing. I think it's about how you apply what you've learned. So in our communities, we're teaching our children about, in ONIX magazine in particular, we're teaching children about wealth building. We're closing those gaps. We are talking about how it is important to be inclusive and the importance of community and the importance of having a base within your community. One thing I love about ONIX magazine is that with ONIX, we're honoring Bishop Ellis. We're honoring some very high-powered gentlemen in September. But our celebrities really are your next-door neighbors. So we talk about the importance and how critical it is that we have education that is broad-based and talk about how it impacts African Americans and how it impacts black people in general. There are a lot of issues we talk about in the lifestyle of ONIX magazine, but just about every lifestyle issue impacts African Americans differently. So we take real estate, we take vacationing, we take education, we take all of these very general issues that we maybe don't think about on a individually, but we think about them broadly. But we show the sources of how African Americans are impacted and how they are the solutions to any kind of issues. And that is what I think really helps shape how we are as a community.
Right. In terms of course, where we've come from to where we are now, do you believe, Ms. Reed, that despite the tireless work that, publications or black-run, black-owned publications and media houses in the United States, despite the tireless work, are there still underrepresented voices in the African American community in the United States?
There are still some community voices that we need to hear from. One thing that we do in business is when you have your very clear-cut vision of what your business is going to be, it is important to have surrounded with you people who have that same vision, not those who have their own agendas. So it becomes critical to have a voice that is united. It's important to have a voice that is that's understandable and it's coming from a trusted person. And I think that many people are not, there's so many different ways that we can take a different issue and look at it. And I think many times people are perhaps afraid of stepping out. They don't know what's going to come back. We live in a very public environment. It's social media. How is this going to impact me if I say this? How is this going to impact me, later on down the line? How is it going to impact my family? So I think a lot of times people are stepping away from saying things, but the right people are saying the right things. We in America, we have many different organizations that are stepping out who are not afraid. ONIX magazine is one of those. We take the very basic issues that are impacting our community and talk about it and use the sources and the resources that of African Americans who are making a difference and making that impact.
Right. And you mentioned unity, unification, uniting voices to deal with the issues that we face. A lot of our audience that watch our program are Bahamians. And many of them, either they heard about it or seen it in a press release, or maybe they saw some of the big, beautiful billboards in South Florida promoting ONIX magazine and some of the awardees. But they have to look, I'm sure, at the selection of persons such as Bishop Ellis and Prime Minister Davis and Sir Franklin Wilson as inspirational to them. When we talk about composition of South Florida particularly, you're talking about Afro-Caribbean, Afro-Cuban, a lot of different diasporas mixed in there, but all of us sharing, of course, our African heritage.
Right.
And when you talk about the fact that ONIX is, so in tune to that their selection process goes beyond persons who are just living or residing in the United States of America to even these far-flung islands down here. I think it's inspirational to all 420,000 Bahamians residing in country, and of course the diaspora in the United States and around the world. But what led to, I suppose, the attention that Bahamians are receiving from publications like ONIX?
Well, I guess I can answer that. My parents are Bahamian. So I lived and I grew up in the Bahamas. My aunt is here with me, Linda Brennan, and she's the face of the ONIX Foundation. But one of the things that we discovered during this transition of bringing in the Bahamian piece is that Bahamians were very essential and very involved with the movement in 1965 with the Flagler Railroad tracks. When you think about how with the contract, African Americans could not read nor write, so they couldn't sign the contracts. So it was the Bahamians who signed the contract. When you look at the national, our Black national anthem, written by individuals who were descendants of Bahamians. So the Bahamians have always been involved. But I think, Christian, sometimes we don't control our narratives. We don't tell our stories. Other people are writing them, and when they write them, they sometimes conveniently leave things out, or they just don't talk about those things that we would see as essential. When we look at what we're doing with ONIX magazine on a national and international level, we find the issues we're experiencing in America, we experience that in the Caribbean, gangs, young black males, black and brown males, feeling there's no hope, there's no leadership. We find the same thing in London, in the UK. And so now we're finding, as we come together and as we connect, that we have all experienced the same problem. So now, cohesively, we must come up with some type of solution. So I think with ONIX magazine now, next steps is connecting the dots. We're looking at putting together exchange programs in which we would take males from the Caribbean, bring them to Orlando, have them to meet some of the folks who are there, take some of the folks in Central Florida or Florida and have them to come to the Caribbean, have a group go to Canada, have a group go to London. And what we're now building is our future. We're doing nation building. We're connecting the dots as we've done with the internet. Although we have global internet, but many times we have not traveled to those destinations. There's no boots on the ground. So I think ONIX Magazine now has decided that we need to be more global in our initiative. So we're bringing global people together, that when we have women on the move, men of honor, we're now getting involved with a global dialogue. Hopefully, in about a year or two, we're looking to build a conference for the women on the move and men of honor. And during that conference, we're going to be looking at global export, how we do business in Nigeria, how we do business in Ghana, how we do business in Toronto, Canada, how we do business in Bimini, Barbados, Nassau. So your generation, I say again, would be very instrumental in what we're doing with ONIX Magazine. Now, we're not going to take you from your father, but we will engage you in your voice and begin to look at how we build this global economy
I certainly
with people of color.
I certainly would be happy to be involved in that.
Oh, man.
You know, Mr. Black, when we talk about these initiatives, a lot of them that have the potential to not only promote our shared heritage, but when we talk about, you know, countries in the Caribbean that are always looking for foreign direct investment, and the fact that there are people that look like us, that we can be connected to do that. You know, there's this perception in the Caribbean that to get something done in some of these countries, a white man with a briefcase has to come along to move those things ahead. And, you know, I went to boarding school in the United States in Wisconsin, and I've lived in a couple of different places. And, you know, most of the most exceptional people that I've ever met, in terms of people who are doing a lot of things in the realm of science and technology, have been African Americans, or even persons who I've developed friendships with from a lot of different African countries. And one of my you know, biggest concerns, a shared concern that we have when we talk is why is it so hard for us to go beyond these various different borders of our countries and connect and work together to, you know, achieve a lot of things in our different individual countries.
I think as we have spoken with the Prime Minister, one of the things that he has said, and he continues to push, is the importance of engaging the Bahamian diaspora, the African diaspora. During the time that my parents were growing up, there was a negative on the African American experience, and that was sort of kind of created narratives of African Americans coming to the Caribbean. Many of those who are now children and second and third generation of my parents and our grandparents are millionaires, billionaires, serial entrepreneurs. It's a whole different landscape. So now as we look at that, we have to say to ourselves, are we smart enough to begin to engage one another? Or are we going to go with the same Willie Lynch mindset that, you know, if you're not a certain way, then it's not going to be productive? So with ONIX Magazine, we tried to dispel that. We create an ecosystem that is just not African American. We're Afrocentric, but community inclusive. So we know that we have to bring all people together to facilitate the change we seek.
Right.
So,
But
we have to know who we are.
Indeed. You mentioned, Mr. Black, in terms of knowing who we are, you mentioned a while ago, you know, Martin Luther King Jr. and some of the leaders or traditional leaders that we've had in the black community, whether we look in, you know, the United States of America at Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, we look at Africa, Kwame Nkrumah, Patrice Lumumba, Nelson Mandela, go on and on. Our leaders have, you know, some of them have been taken away from us, and some of them have gone on to the land of our ancestors. In terms of leadership in the African American community, many would argue that there is, you know, since those persons, this dearth of leadership in the African American community that makes it even more important for us to highlight people who are doing exceptional things. You know, I read in some of the information I read on in terms of people who ONIX has highlighted and honored in the past, and I'm trying to remember the gentleman's name. You have to forgive me. I should have put it in the notes. But Mr. Holiday, who I believe
Doc Holliday
from Florida,
right,
his brother was instrumental in NASA's program in being able to track satellites and things that go up into space.
The Hubble telescope.
There are so many other examples of lesser known achievements of African Americans that have contributed not only to Florida's development or the Bahamas' development, but you know, when we think about us as a civilization. And it is inspiring for all of those young African Americans, young men like myself, to be able to have a repository like ONIX for honoring all of these persons who have done great things. In addition to that is also African American women. And also I saw that a former director of tourism in our country, Joy Gibralou, was recognized by ONIX as well as being
Tanya Pratt,
as being an
Bertha Cooper, Dr. Ruby Dollins.
Women of renown. So talking about that as well in terms, we talked a lot about, we've been very male-centric in the argument, but talking as well about uplifting African American women as well, and the fact that that has not been lost on ONIX. If you care to talk about it.
No, it has not been lost on ONIX, and that's one thing we enjoy the most is, like we were saying, imparting that wisdom onto other people and having them understand the importance of uplifting. I said earlier that our celebrities are the next door neighbors. There are people who, like Mr. Black has said, they're ordinary people doing extraordinary things. There are a lot of people who are doing very good things, but there are only a few people who are doing good things with the intention of helping somebody else. And that is the message that we want to impart. That is what we want people to walk away from with ONIX magazine. Mr. Black talks about, you know, we're the Ebony, the other magazines that have done very well in that area. But we do it in a very special way because it is, they're not the most noted people. Like you mentioned, Doc Holliday. Doc Holliday worked on one of the most significant inventions in our history in this world, and that's the Hubble telescope. And he was the first to put the component that was going to help us see back to the Earth and to see what's going on. And when we were doing his story, there was not a lot of research about him. So we had to really take time to talk to him and delve into his story. His story in our publication is now sits as a resource to anyone else who wants to learn about Doc Holliday. So it's important that we tell those stories. It's important that we get it right. And it's important that, you know, we share that it's there, because that is history that we were able to bring to the nation.
Right. And in terms of, you know, this conversation, we touched on it a bit early in terms of social justice, especially being in the publishing business. In the publishing business, I'm sorry, that you're in, it seems as if in the United States we hear this argument being put forth that democracy is under attack. Is that from where you sit? Do you see that as being the reality of the situation?
I think that this is a time that we need to bring together like-minded people. And there are many issues. Poverty, there are issues with education. There's issues with the advancement of certain people. And I think there's a lot of things that are under attack, not only in America, but I find that there's responsibility of African Americans. When we were in Canada, it was, no, actually with the UK, it was shared with me with some of our friends in the UK, said that when African Americans catch a cold, black people in the world catch pneumonia. And I was shocked to hear that. So what we're doing now, as we're bringing together those of the African diaspora from the UK, from the Caribbean, from Canada. It is almost saying to African Americans, we must hold you accountable for leadership in the richest nation in the world. So you guys are able to speak truth to power. And we need to hear that because oftentimes those things are censored so we don't hear the truth of the perception of what's going on. We don't know that there are millionaires and billionaires out here running their own businesses and very successful. We feel that if they're in the Caribbean, perhaps they're struggling or they live in little huts. And we have found that not to be the case. Or if they're in the UK, it's only a very small component because the UK is predominantly white. Not true. We find that in Canada, are there any blacks in Canada? Oh man, most of the people migrated during slavery to Canada. So we're dispelling a lot of that, and because we're actually now going in different places and seeing and communicating, and those people are coming to us for Women on the Move, Men of Honor. We're sitting down, we're having conversations, and they're saying, you know, I saw the other day such and such was happening. And then we said, no, that really wasn't, that didn't happen like that. So we're talking now. So I think with ONIX Magazine, we're filling a void. When they say democracy is under attack, there's a lot of things that are under attack. And we don't want certain people to hijack the conversation and say that we as a people of color, we have to sit down and sometimes have a conversation with ourselves and say, you know what are we doing or what have we not done that has prevented us from really rising? We come from a continent of the most successful people, of the most successful artists, from the most successful economic development, and we lost it somewhere along the way. What happened is that we stopped educating, we stopped teaching, we stopped having family reunions, we stopped celebrating our accomplishments, and we had others to tell us what you're celebrating isn't important. I love peach and peas and rice. I love conch salad. I love steamed stewed conch. A lot of people don't know what that is. So it's my job now to make sure when we come here with the ONIX excursion, and because you all are boots on the ground, when we bring that essence experience to the Bahamas, you guys are here to share what goes on and even introduce others to the family island. So your position and what you're doing, Christian, is, I mean, it is most important. I mean, we talk about our leaders of the day, but you guys are where our leaders of the day existed when they did the work.
Thank you, Mr. Black. You know, our leaders back then came from, and you know, at that point, I learned that most of them were Pan-Africanists, or had a strong fundamental belief in Pan-Africanism. And, you know, there's a whole generation or two, I think, of people who've come up after that who have been, you know, brainwashed into thinking differently about the history of people in the African diaspora. You know, a friend of mine who is a Pan-Africanist always talks about how, you know, we taught them how to travel, we taught them how to eat, we taught them how to bathe, right? And he goes on the list of, you know, things that started in the African civilization and spread like wildfire around the rest of the world. Today, a very interesting concept that we talk about is this idea of reparations, especially in countries like Jamaica, the Bahamas, or certain countries where there were these plantocracies.
So, Chris, you just gonna make us go political with it. Okay, well, go ahead.
I just want to get from,
you're gonna make us go political.
I just want to get from your opinion in terms of, you know, this idea of reparations for Caribbean countries, and especially from where you sit as people with the responsibility, of course. And we talked about, you know, ONIX Magazine and informing and entertaining and inspiring.
Right.
And I wanted to know if your publication has ever taken that editorial focus in terms of advocating for or promoting this idea of reparation.
I think when we look at reparation and when we look at opportunities to advance, DE and I has just been sort of kind of shut down in America. But D&I really did not impact blacks. It was more for white women and other folks. And we sometimes pigeonhole ourselves because we feel that perhaps we cannot do this because someone said we can't. One thing I love about the Caribbean culture, if you are carving coconuts, you're the best coconut carver in the business. If you're making coconut candy, you're aspiring to be the best in that business. And I think entrepreneurship is the key. Education and entrepreneurship is the key to advancement. And I think that a lot of folks are waiting for someone to say, okay, I'm going to give you this. So we're looking at the gentleman in Atlanta, Jamal Bryant, and he is now starting a revolt against Target and other companies to say that we just won't buy. African Americans are the biggest consumers in America. When we sort of kind of manage our monies, manage our messaging, we rise. And that is what happened in the 1960s. They came together and they brought other people together and they sent a message. I think what we have to look at now is that we come together as a conference with Men of Honor, Women on the Move, young people like yourself, and we start having those think tanks to say, you know what do you think about this? And we bring the group together from different countries, from different places, and say, how do we deal with this? And what do you think about this? And how can we put something together to move us forward on a global initiative? Right now, Africa is being raped of all of its resources, colonist approach. Even here in the Caribbean, when we look at our friends, the Chinese, many of them are good people, some of them are not so good, but we find that the fish has become an issue or concern because they're overfishing. And we have to become more proactive than reactive. And we're waiting for things to happen, then we get excited about it. This conversation we're having today, coming here to the Bahamas, is a conversation that need to be led when we come here with ONIX Magazine and we put together an empowerment session to actually talk about things that we need to talk about in the way of business, global initiatives. Folks are moving down to Ghana, moving down to Nigeria, moving down to the Family Islands, bringing about infrastructure. How do we bring infrastructure to those keys and begin to build our own, right? It's not happening because we're not coming together with a holistic approach of sitting down and having a conversation. It all begins with just a thought, hope, and a conversation.
Right. Mr. Black, Ms. Reed, next month, the city of Port-au-Prince celebrates 355 years since coming into existence. And Haiti being the first black republic, the first black monarchy on this side of the world. Certainly with all of the issues that are happening, them spiraling into gang violence in the capital in Port-au-Prince, which has, I think, gripped the capital and certainly has led to a lot of atrocious crimes being committed against persons in Haiti. A lot of our concern, I think, in the Caribbean is whether or not other people are seeing what's happening in Haiti and whether or not they care. And, you know, going back to a lot of the situations that have happened in Haiti in the early 90s, in terms of when Haiti was once again in a similar situation, a lot of Caribbean people and people of Haiti reached out to a lot of Congress people, senators, policymakers in the United States to raise awareness for what was happening, which led, of course, to U.S. involvement in the issues there. Are people in the United States currently aware of some of the atrocious things that are happening in Haiti?
They are, and we have to go back in history to really understand what is going on there in Haiti. How on an island, right across the mountain, people are living in the lap of luxury. And on the opposite side of the island, where there was a revolution led by Toussaint that really created a problem, like Nat Turner with Birth of a Nation. Why were they sort of kind of put out that we would not support them throughout the world? You started a revolt. In America, it was stated that if you mentioned Toussaint's names on the plantation, your tongue would be cut out of your mouth. I tell many Americans, African Americans, you look at Haitians a certain way. Had it not been for Haiti, you would not have been freed on the plantation. Had it not been for Haiti and Toussaint with the revolt, the first revolt that we ever experienced. But as a result, that has come with a lot of pushback. That has come with a lot of, let's make sure that they never rise again. But when you look at an island, and one side of it is prosperous, and right across the mountain, they're in poverty, you have to say to yourself, what's really going on that one little island?
Right. And, you know, when we talk about the exposure that the war in the Middle East has had, or the war in Eastern Europe has had in Ukraine, you know, the issues that are going on in Haiti, the issues that are going on in South Sudan, the issues that are going on that are affecting black people seem to not be covered the same way as some of those other issues. In terms of the way ONIX magazine sort of decides, you know, what you edit, what you editorialize, what you publish, is there ever this thinking that for your audience, let me try and rethink now how I want to put that, for what you want to present to your audience, that it should be tailored to, I guess, you know, make them aware of some of these things that are happening throughout the rest of the world. And I asked the question to say, would there be then a different focus from ONIX or other publishers as opposed to the New York Times or the Wall Street in covering an issue like what's happening in Haiti or what's happening in some of these other parts of the world?
You're looking at your demographic. You're looking at who your readers are and who you're trying to reach. What we try to do with ONIX magazine is to show the positive of our experiences and reinforce the positives of the experiences. Because for so long we've seen the negative. We've seen the 6 o'clock news cycle. We've seen the 5 o'clock, a black man just killed this or a black man just did whatever. So what we're trying to do now is dispel that and to say that there are a lot of great stories that are taking place. And you almost have to feel good about yourself, because if you continue to watch the 6 o'clock news cycle, the 24-hour news cycle, you would feel like, oh man, black folks got some real issues. But it's who's telling the story, and the content in which it's being told. And again, with what you all are doing with podcasts and things of that nature, this is more of an opportunity, I believe, that you guys can really begin to engage. And what ONIX does is to create a platform. I heard President Biden, when they were opening the Emmett Till Museum, he said, if there were not an Ebony magazine or a Jet magazine, we would have never learned of Emmett Till. There's a lot of things going on in our communities now that if we were not tell the story, if we were not here, people would not know it's going on. And so that's why we try to create the platform, be an inspiration to people like yourself, and say that, you know what, we can do better, we must do better, we will do better, and this is how we start.
Right. And, you know,
I want to add to that, though,
okay,
that we celebrate African American or Black achievement throughout Florida and beyond. So yes, we do look at the positive side of what's happening, but we work with a lot of writers around the nation who bring those stories that you're talking about. We are talking about what's going on in Haiti. We're talking about what's going on in different parts of the world. Mm-hmm. But we find these stories and these writers who are talking about it, about how it's impacting African Americans and how it's impacting us as a nation. So that is the story we tell. And we have been very successful in making sure that people know and that they know how they can help others around the nation. Because that's what it really is about how, knowing about it is one thing, but being intentional about giving back and helping is really the story we want to tell. Making a difference.
It's all about transformative leadership.
Yes.
Right. And without the transformative leadership, we will never, I don't think we can go back to the day of Martin Luther King and Mandela, because their issues then, similar in nature, but it was the issues then. How do we develop leaders for today, and that they're working in the mediums of today to make those things, to address those issues and those concerns. So this is what we're all about with ONIX Magazine. This is why we bring people together for this Wakanda moment to say that, you know what, let's have a discussion, let's network, let's see how we can grow what we have. And if we all bring our skills and our abilities to bear, I believe that we can really excel to another level, out of this stratosphere.
Right, right, and I like the Wakanda reference.
Yeah.
It's that powerful. Mr. Black and Ms. Reed, we've come to the end of our program now, but I completely agree. I am impressed and inspired by the impact that ONIX Magazine is having, and for your commitment to carrying or to try to spread this understanding, this awareness, this consciousness of what we ought to do to really, and I think the best way I can put it is by quoting Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune.
I would quote that.
To be tall trees standing upright for change and empowerment.
There you go. There you go.
Thank you.
I'm a graduate of Bethune-Cookman, so hey, you're right on point. That's the way to close it out.
Right. So thank you for joining us on this program. Thank you for the interview. It's been a riveting hour.
Oh, man, awesome. And we hope to see you guys September 26, 27, Orlando, Florida. ONIX Magazine, Man of Honor, ONIX, ONYXMOH.com.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Ms.
so
Reed.
much.
Thank you for tuning in to our program, Jones & Company. I've been your host, Christian Jones. Have a good night.